we've been debating very often on this channel the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of deep intolerance. This story is truly incredible. The woman's name is Cat Janice. She's 31 years old. She lives in Virginia. She has terminal cancer. She doesn't have that long to live, and I can show you some pictures of her in hospital. Now, she is a singer by trade, and she's put out a song on the internet, Dance You Outta My Head. Let's have a listen. So her song, as you can see there, was shared by lots and lots of people, and for good reason, because she has a 7-year-old boy. She's going to die very shortly, and she's used that song, and it's been pushed and sponsored by a lot of very well-known people, a lot of ordinary folk too, in an effort to raise money for that 7-year-old boy when she's gone. All right, and that's why it's taken off. And millions of people have seen these clips. But somebody has discovered that she has liked pro-Israeli posts, that she has been supportive in the wake of the October the 7th attacks of some of the work the IDF are doing. And now the backlash has begun. The basic argument is that while she wants you to help her 7-year-old, she couldn't care less about 7-year-olds in Gaza that have died. The level of hatred and vitriol that has been poured against this woman effectively has cancelled her. And that, folks, is where we are. I find it deeply, deeply depressing and upsetting. Now, the Daily Mail front page today, a report by the Community Security Trust showing a huge increase in really not just unpleasant, but actually in many cases quite violent attacks against Jews in Britain. I'm joined by Jonathan Sacerdoti, Jewish journalist and broadcaster. And Jonathan, the numbers are what they are. The Jewish population in Britain is so much smaller than most people think. How many? Oh, millions. No, there are not. It's about 300,000 people who identify as Jewish.
Even less, 271,000.
OK, well, I was roughly right. But it's a very small number that identify as Jewish, let alone practice. And yet we have a Muslim population of several million, growing by 75% every decade. And that's at the core of this, isn't it?
Jews are about 0.5% of the UK population, and despite that, a lot of people spend a lot of time obsessing on us and our supposed powers and controls over different things. I think one of the problems when we look at rising anti-Semitism in general is that most people have never met a Jew. And so if you haven't met Jewish people, you might be inclined to believe or subscribe to some of the more outlandish conspiracy theories and things like that about them.
You might, but isn't the problem here coming from Islamism?
Well, certainly some of it is. I would say that there is... Yeah, I would say some. There are, I think... Anti-Semitism predates Islamism. I think anti-Semitism is called the oldest hatred for good reason. I mean, there's been Christian anti-Semitism in the past. There is today far-left anti-Semitism, far-right anti-Semitism, and Islamist anti-Semitism, no doubt about it. At times like this, when I think there is a spike in anti-Semitic incidents, partly inspired by, let's say, or at the same time as what's going on in Israel, military action in Israel, I think that the Islamist anti-Semitism absolutely does perhaps take a front seat, but we can't be complacent and say that that's the only reason.
You're right, and you're absolutely right. Stephen Fry said that anti-Semitism is a light sleeper, and it was a very interesting way of describing it. You know, I've seen what's happened with my own eyes to the Jewish community in Brussels, because I was there for 20 years. I've seen the Jewish quarter in Strasbourg, with kids going into school with armed soldiers with them to protect them. And basically, if you're Jewish, you don't live in Brussels anymore, unless you're wealthy and you live in a sort of gated community. Is there a danger that's happening to London?
Look, even here in London and elsewhere in the UK, Jewish schools, synagogues, community centres have had high security around them for years. It's not just now. I think it's something that, as Jews, we're quite used to it. We almost don't notice it sometimes. When you go into a synagogue, there's usually security guards, there's lots of cameras. Sometimes you'll even have airport-style X-ray machines for certain places if there's a high-profile event or guest. I think that is terrible, but it's like that in many parts of the world. It's like that for good reason, because we just want to be careful. There are plenty of people who want to kill Jews. Do
you fear for the future of Jews in this country?
I think I'd be lying if I said I didn't. And speaking to more and more Jewish people all the time, I've encountered, I think, much more anxiety over the last 4 months than perhaps ever in my life. And I'm quite tuned into this subject. My late father was a hidden child during the Holocaust in Italy. And I've grown up always very aware of the idea of keeping an eye out for anti-Semitism. As you say, it's a light sleeper. And I had, from as long as I can remember, his lessons. So when I do see things happening in the UK, it does worry me because, as I keep saying to people, I'm British. I'm born here. I'm very proud of being a Brit. I have every right to practice my religion, also to have come from a different background ethnically or a different religion than other people. We all do. And I think it's shocking when Jewish people are seen as somehow different or other from the rest of Britain in ways that just are not true and not helpful. And the one thing that I do hope that viewers think about when they see the headlines like today's is I think that this isn't really just a problem for Jewish people, because a society that has this level of anti-Semitism that goes unchecked sometimes by police, we have the police not really policing the protests sufficiently. We have even the court case of those 3 women who were supporting Hamas.
We've covered it this week extensively.
Found guilty, and yet the judge who had liked anti-Israel posts online decided not to punish them, in his own words, even though he found them guilty. Those sorts of things, I think it's for all of us in Britain to speak up against, because it's not just for Jews. There's something wrong with our society. Our moral compass is awry when we don't speak out against that kind of prejudice and discrimination against anybody.
We've seen it before, this level of intolerance. The Jews come first, others come afterwards. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for joining